Hi, my name's Amy Summers, and today I'll be discussing publication bias in psychological sciences, particularly focusing on how publication bias impacts organisational psychology. So on the agenda for today is, first of all, what is publication bias, including, why does it occur and why it's a problem when it comes to psychology. And then I'll be looking more specifically at publication bias in relation to organisational psychology. So how does it impact this field, and also what can we do as practitioners who are, practicing in organisational psychology? What can we do to help address the issue? So first up, what is publication bias? Well, the whole concept refers to a situation where only certain research gets published. So this does happen for a variety of reasons, but essentially publication bias suggests that the papers get published due to their strength or particular direction. So the strength of their results, whether they're worthy of publication, or the direction of the findings themselves. So are they interesting enough? Do they add value to the current body of literature? All these things contribute to whether they get published or not. We know that positive results are more likely to get published than negative results. So if a hypothesis is supported, if what is predicted is actually found to be true with a body of research, then that paper is more likely to get published. But what this results in is that the information that is available through literature, through publications, is not representative of all research that has been conducted. So when does publication bias occur? Well, there are many factors that determine what gets published, including whether something is interesting enough, as I just mentioned. So if there aren't significant results, quite often a paper is not considered interesting enough to get published. So even though it might actually be really valuable to the literature, if it doesn't, if people, I guess the editors don't think that it's going to get enough attention, it won't get published. There's also, I guess, it comes down to whether the researchers actually want to choose to publish the paper, if they think it's interesting enough, and then up to the journals to publish the papers. So they make, a decision at the end of the day whether they think it's worthy of publication or not. So these decisions are impacted by significant competition. So there's a lot of competition to get things published, and that's due to career progression for academics, for people who are working in these fields. It's obviously seen as a good thing to get published, but also funding. So if a researcher can get something off the ground and get it happening and get it published, they're more likely to get future funding and be able to keep continuing with that sort of work. So this makes it a really hard issue to manage and prevent. So given that the success of particular journals and people's careers depend on the success of published research papers, the problem is unlikely to go away anytime soon. That being said, there have been a couple of suggestions to address publication bias. So you can see there, this includes registration of every single research project or trial so that the findings of all studies can be tracked. So, it gives us more of a chance to see the complete picture rather than only understanding the findings from the particular results that have been chosen to be published. In an ideal world, some have noted that every article would be published. However, this is just not realistic. It would be impossible for journals to publish every single item, and it would also lower the standard of, published journal articles, as it would have to, they'd have to publish every single piece regardless of the quality. So why is publication bias a problem? So it's problematic for a number of reasons. First of all, it impacts the validity of research findings. So this distorts the complete body of literature. It means we can't take articles at face value, especially given that we only see, one component of the body of research. So we just don't have the entire picture to be able to make judgment calls based on this information, which means that it threatens evidence-based practice. So without the complete picture, we're not fully informed to provide guidance and to use this to inform our practice. So this means we do not have the knowledge and evidence to truly provide evidence-based practice as a psychologist. It also leads to investment in the wrong causes. So money and time are often invested into further investigating particular topics. If they've, articles have been published showing that something's worthwhile, then people will invest money and time into, further researching this. But if we're only being presented with biased materials, we may very well go down the wrong path when trying to further establish understanding in that topic area. So I guess this means that certain topics that actually might be more important or more valuable might be overlooked simply because we're following a path of, published articles. Also, participants may be misguided when it comes to actually participating in a particular study. So ethically, we have an obligation as psychologists and researchers to keep participants informed about the study that they are choosing to participate in. So if they think that they're contributing to a greater cause, that they're actually giving up their time for something worthwhile, and that that it follows on from particular research and I guess literature that's already in existence, this actually might be false pretenses. They might be engaging in the particular study because they've made some assumptions about what has been published and thinking that it's a worthwhile cause, when in actual fact, they don't have the complete picture either. And finally, it can also impact education. So teachers often use, publications to provide evidence-based education for their students. So what happens when this literature is actually only one section of the research that's been conducted? I guess it means that students are being taught a very specific thing. It could be actually excluding other information that's really important. They could be being taught the wrong thing, or something that's not quite accurate if we had known the complete picture. So I guess this isn't actually best practice, and then these students will go off into the world and then start sharing the information that they've learnt, in which case then that could be harmful, or just not best practice. So moving on to organisational psychology and how publication impacts this in particular. So first of all, I just want to acknowledge that there's not actually much literature on publication bias directly in relation to organisational psychology. Most of the research has been done around medicine and clinical psychology, but there is a strong consensus that publication bias can have a negative impact and be potentially harmful, as the wrong approach might be taken based on a single publication focus, rather than an approach that might have been taken if we'd had all of the information. So I guess in terms of organisational psychology specifically, we add value through an evidence-based practice as organisational psychologists. That's essentially sort of the role of an organisational psychologist. So whether that be through psychometric assessment, business and team structures, and providing advice in that area, providing advice on leadership and team development, and different team dynamics, or even change management and the different approaches that we can take with this. Typically they are evidence-based practice. So if we're not fully informed on the evidence due to publication bias, we are unable to fulfill our obligation as an organisational psychologist properly. Additionally, we have ethical obligations to different, different people and different groups of people when we're working as an organisational psychologist. So, we want to, I guess, above all, not cause any harm to anyone or to, the organisation, so to individuals or the organisation. We want to be worth the money that they're spending on our service, and we want to actually be making improvements and, I guess, having an impact and contributing to their success. That's the whole idea of an organisational psychologist. So we want to be providing fair and accurate information and advice to employees, acting in a way that actually helps these individuals rather than, negatively harming them in any way. We want to be providing, the best advice for our client and the organisation, making sure that we're actually delivering on what we say we can deliver, and helping their business to grow and succeed. And finally, we want to be helping stakeholders of all kinds, making sure that, we have the information so we can provide guidance, that we're, trustworthy, we're respected for what we're doing. But if we're not privy to the big picture due to publication bias, any of these ethical obligations can be impacted. So this can result in us, losing trust. It could result in us causing damage to teams and individuals and the overall organisation. And look, it just might lead to us not being able to provide best practice. And, as an organisational psychologist, that's what we want to do, provide evidence-based solutions to organisational problems. So with publication bias, if we're not aware of it, we just might not be having the optimum impact that we could be. So what can we do to address publication bias in organisational psychology? It's a really difficult one, given that there's not a whole lot of literature when it comes to organisational psychology, and also it's a problem that's not going away anytime soon. The number one thing we can do to address this in organisational psychology is to be aware of it. We need to look at the broader body of research and learn to identify when something has been impacted by publication bias. I think, as an organisational psychologist, we can conduct thorough research to ensure we have a broad perspective, and potentially even shying away from peer review journals at sometimes to, look at things like case studies or, other sort of business examples to gain a broader perspective. Number three, if we're conducting research ourselves, we should be assessing it for publication bias. So there are a number of methods that can be used to do this, just to ensure that, everything we're doing is, not sort of affected by that bias. And finally, look, we should be using multiple methods, I think, when it comes to implementing any sort of processes or advice, with our clients and organizations. So this way we can cover all bases and ensure we minimize damage caused by publication bias and try to, I guess, just provide the best service that we can. So that comes to the end of my presentation. Here's my references. Thank you very much.